Bases dropped on another edition of Soccer Down here. It's November 14th. There's a few things to talk about this morning as the MLS trade window has closed. We prepare for expansion draft protected lists. We have players leaving the league. We have managers coming in. There's a critical U.S. men's national team game tomorrow. The U23s play today. John, you pick. Where you want to start?
Well, since the deal had not been finalized by the time we went off the air, but finalized later on in the afternoon, let's start at home and talk about Darlington Nagbe.
It's not a surprise that the deal is done. I think people were freaking out because it wasn't announced at 1:01 on Monday, but
yeah,
it's done. It's the same amount of transfer money that Atlanta sent to Portland at the end of 2017 to bring Darlington Nagbe to Atlanta. There's potential it could go up from there. Little unclear on what kind of bonuses are built in. It's $375,000 in additional allocation money that would happen in increments, not in one season. Tim Bezbachenko told the Columbus Dispatch that those performance requirements were a high threshold, such as winning the MLS Cup. Bezbachenko said, if he's hitting those conditional bonuses, we're in a very good place as a team. So, same amount that Atlanta sent to Portland, same amount that Orlando sent to Columbus for Justin Merrim. Now, remember, Columbus sent a lot of that back to Orlando to bring Merrim back, and then yada, yada, yada. But that's the type of value that we're talking about. Also thrown in is an international roster slot for 1 year, which generally they're valued anywhere between $100,000 to $250,000. Usually, kind of the value varies a little bit team to team and how this goes. But that's another nice little bonus. I think we've said really everything about the potential move that there is to say. I mean, Darlington's been a great part of Atlanta United for a couple of years, but according to all of the different reporting that's out there, whether it's in Columbus, whether it's from The Athletic, whether it's from Doug Robertson, whether it's from others on the ground here in Atlanta, it was something that Nagbe wasn't going to commit a long-term future to the city of Atlanta, to Atlanta United, and he wanted to be closer to home. So he's going into the last year of his contract. It's kind of a no-brainer to get what you can at this point, and when you can get that type of haul, you have to do it. It's a smart move.
And now the quest for Atlanta United and trying to fill that slot has begun, and I'm sure that begun as far back as the time when it was put out by Doug Robertson that Nagbe was not interested in signing a longer deal and staying here. So Atlanta United's had that time frame to start looking at things, and I'm sure that their Christmas list is out there, and now we just wait to see where that goes.
Well, no, their Christmas list is not out there because you don't know how they're going to do this, because I think there's a lot of assumption that you have to go sign somebody. Maybe not. You might not have to, or you might be signing a different type of player than you think. I think a lot of this conversation has been around, well, there's not a direct replacement for Darlington Nagbe. Well, there's not a direct replacement for a lot of players in the game, but you still have to move on, and you still have to figure out what's going to be your best fit with the team you have. It might not be a player like Darlington Nagbe. It might be a different kind of central midfielder. You might decide that you have the central midfielders that you like. There's a lot of things on the table, and I think something that people need to understand about what I think top teams are doing. There was no wait by Atlanta United to get this deal done before they start looking at what might be available, what type of players they want to target. That's an ongoing process for big clubs. I think where MLS is getting to is that type of way of doing business. We've seen it in the past where Major League Soccer teams have been reluctant to make deals because then you're going to miss a window of trying to replace that player. Then you've got to negotiate. It's hard to negotiate, and you might not get anybody, and blah, 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 blah. That's not the current realm of your Atlantas, your LAs, your other big clubs. It's you have dedicated people identifying talents that can fit in any kind of role you might need. Because then you're coming from a position of strength. Then it's, okay, we have an opportunity to make this move. We're going to make this move. It's the best for the club. Now, what are the different profiles of players that are available? What are the different profiles of players that we think could be available? What are the different profiles of players that we hope are available? And then you get into those different profiles. Who is a more defensively minded central midfielder? Who is a more possession-based central midfielder? Who's a more attacking central midfielder? You've got those lists ready to go at a moment's notice. That's what the biggest clubs in the world do. And yeah, it's fair to say that Atlanta United is one of those. So there was no, okay, well, now you can move on. No, that process was already underway because you're always looking, you're always listening, you're always in the market. And that's where MLS has to be going forward, because you have the internal market with allocation money, with trades, with those types of things. But you have the external market, and you have to keep your finger on that pulse to know what you might be able to do. It's big. It's very, very important. So Atlanta United, how they move from here, that's my biggest question going into this offseason. And it was a question that was starting to come up, honestly, through the year, was do you see Frank de Boer target a number 6, which would be a different role than Darlington Nagbe, but I think one that this team really needs to make the jump? Or does he feel like he can continue with the players he has in that role and go look for more of a like-for-like replacement? Or does he like the idea of Barco and Pitti out wide in different situations, or as a second forward in Pitti's case, as we've seen, or Barco's case as well, and say, well, maybe I'd like to go get a number 10. Maybe I'd like to go get a box-to-box midfielder who can play as a 10 sometimes. Maybe I'd like to get a box-to-box midfielder who can drop in and play as a 6. These are the types of things now that you have a spot, you have money to work with. The flip side, and this is something that I think has been lost in the shuffle a little bit, that money that you acquired doesn't necessarily go to a new player. It could go to re-signing an existing player. And that is also a possibility. Julian Gressel is a prime example of this. If you want to use that amount of TAM on Julian Gressel, you have to sign him to a deal that's going to pay him more than the maximum salary threshold, which was $530,000 a year. It's a huge raise from where he was. His play has been at that kind of level. So if you want to go get that money, sign him to a deal that's, for example, just so you know how this works, $600,000 a year. Okay. Then you can buy that down with TAM down to wherever you want, because you have TAM to work with. You're not going to spend it all on just him. You're going to have more TAM to work with in other moves. You've created some more flexibility for yourself. You've got a lot of different ways you can do this now. You're not locked into one way to replace Darlington Nagbe.
Michael Ruiz, along those lines, wanted to have this discussion and wanted to know about what Gressel could demand as far as salary. He was thinking in the neighborhood of $500,000, and a sub question: any chance of seeing Gressel go to the Bundesliga?
I don't think he's a Bundesliga player. I don't think he's got the speed, and I don't think he's got the defensive strength to do it, because, and this is where you get into the conversation long term about where does he play. He's shown his best here in Atlanta out wide on the right, and he's shown his absolute best in a 3-5-2 as a wing back where he's got cover with 3 center backs behind him. De Boer and Tata Martino both showed a reluctance to play him as a right back in a 4-man back line. All right, he's played as a winger, different type of winger, but he can play as a winger in a 4-3-3. Could he do it in a 4-4-2? Yeah, probably. He's played as a central midfielder as well. He said he'd be willing to play in Nagbe's kind of role centrally. He'd play it very differently. He'd be a very different type of central midfielder, but we've seen him do that. He can help you there too. Where is his best fit? Because when you start talking about committing this amount of money, $500,000, $600,000 to a player, and I do think just from flexibility standpoint, if you're getting up into the $500,000 range, you're probably going to go ahead and go over that maximum threshold to bring TAM into play that you can use to buy him down. And remember, you can't combine GAM and TAM on a deal. So you couldn't get him up to that point, then use some TAM, some GAM. No. Once you commit to which allocation money you're going to use, you have to use only from that bucket. So I think you go above 5 if you want to do that. If you're talking those kind of numbers, just because it gives you more flexibility. I don't think he's a Bundesliga player, at least not yet. I think athleticism is going to be the thing that might hold him back there. And I think the biggest picture for anybody who's thinking about, Julian Gressel and committing long-term future is, where is he going to play for you? Because he hasn't necessarily settled into one position. And that's going to be the biggest question for him, because you don't commit that type of money to a utility player generally. You commit that type of player to a starter in X role. And where is that for you? Because it could be different from team to team as they look at him and what he can bring to their team.
Kevin from Charlotte about the Nagbe discussion. He says that he doesn't think Atlanta can find a like for Nagbe. It'll just look different. He'll miss the calm smoothness he provides, but can replace it with better off-ball movement in the back of the midfield and quicker passing and cycling to get out of pressure.
Yeah, there's not many players worldwide that are like for like at any level. And there's not many American central midfielders that do what Darlington Nagbe does. He's a special player, no question about it. So can you replace him like for like? Probably not. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, though, because how often do you see teams, just take an injury situation, for example, where you lose a player for a short period of time, you bring in somebody different who might see the role differently or play the role differently, and you unlock something else that might work. Not to say the player that got hurt was a problem, but the change has brought new life, has allowed you to see things a different way, has made you even better without the player that you thought was the better player initially. It happens all the time. So the biggest question is, you look at the central midfield right now without Nagbe, assuming you re-sign Jeff Lorenowitz, assuming you bring Emerson Heinemann back. At the moment, you have Eric Remedi, you have Mo Adams, which there could be a contract situation to deal with when it comes to Adams. Kevin Kratz, it appears, is out of contract. Chris Goslin, I'm assuming, would be in an option kind of year on a homegrown, but he's still got to prove it and just get healthy, honestly. You have Barco, who can play centrally. You have Pitti, who can play centrally as the attacking option. I think you have Luis Fernando, who can play centrally as the attacking option, although I see him more out wide. Carlton could play as a 10 as well. Gressel can play as an 8 or a 10. So you have a lot of different pieces. Can you make it work with a trio from that group? Yeah, I do think you can. And, if you bring Lorenowitz back, you play Lorenowitz, Remedi, Barco, or Remedi Pitti, or Remedi Gressel, which would be very different, but still very possible. Yeah, you can make all those work. But you could also go get... I think the biggest need is the 6. I really think to have that true 30-game starter as a number 6 defensive midfielder to play in front of your back line, whether it's 3 or 4 center backs, and provide that strength defensively, but also that ability on the ball to be the focal point of your build-up play. I think that's the biggest need for this team, and that's a different need, and it's a different kind of player than what Darlington Nagbe gave you. So this move might not result in a player of a similar style coming in, but it can still make the team better in a lot of ways.
Derek Creighton, along the last answer that you gave, wanted to know about Luis Fernando. Wanted to know what his best position might be next year, and wondered whether or not he'd play a major role in a Frank de Boer system.
I think a major role is a stretch. I mean, you're talking about a player who hasn't played above the USL Championship level in his career, and that's a huge jump. So you don't go from that level to being a major role quickly at all. Can he contribute? Yes. I think it's going to be out wide. I think he's going to be an option in a wingback role if you're playing 3-5-2 or 3-4-3. I think he is an option as a winger in a 4-3-3. I think he is an option centrally. I think in a lot of ways he could end up being what Julian Gressel maybe was intended to be when he was drafted. Now, Gressel turned into more than he was expected to be, because you can go back and check the tapes. When he was drafted, it was talked about, Gressel as a player who was versatile, could play a lot of different roles, could step in and play immediately, but he wasn't necessarily seen as a starter, an automatic starter. Luis Fernando and what he did, based off what he did with Atlanta United too, could be that kind of player who can and be a great player to have in an 18, because he can fill a bunch of different needs depending on where the game goes. He has the ability to play in MLS. I think he has the talent. I think for now in 2020, it's going to be adjusting to that different pace of play, making that jump from a USL Championship level and pace to an MLS pace. And that's not an overnight process. So major role, no, but utility role all over the right side and in the middle, yes.
Kevin from Charlotte, along the conversation this morning, thinks that the need is for a dynamic left winger. And he says he can see Speedy fill the need.
Speedy? What?
I don't know who Speedy is, or unless it's just Speed filling that need.
Okay. I actually don't think left wing is the issue, because I think you're going to have to figure out how you're going to play Barco and Pitti right now. And generally it's been one of them on the left wing. More often than not, it was Barco on the left, Pitti in the middle at the end of the season, although we saw different times in the year players in different spots. We saw Pitti out wide on the left. We saw him out wide on the right. We saw Barco centrally, but most often out wide on the left. I don't think either one of them are going anywhere, barring a wild, crazy offer that is hard to say no to. So a dynamic left winger, I don't know where they would play. And I don't think you're going to bring somebody in to play at the expense of Barco or Pitti at this point. So I don't think that's really the need. I keep coming back to the 6. I think that's the need. I think the other thing about a winger is the bigger question about what is the team's base going to be? Is it going to be 4-3-3? If it is, then that's a different type of need than a 3-5-2, because you saw Justin Merrim play as a wing back on the left in a 3-5-2. He's not a wing back. He did a good job of it for a good while, but George Bello will be playing that kind of role if you play 3-5-2. If you play a 4-man backline, Bello will be your left back. Then you need a winger, but again, you go back to Barco or Pitti, and depending on how you move the pieces around. I keep coming back to the 6. I don't think you have that 6 that could elevate this team, and that would appear to be one of the missing pieces.
Come back to, I guess, that discussion as we go this morning. News out of Montreal, and Alex at Cuppers wanted to know what our thoughts were on Thierry Henry and l'Impact de Montréal.
Well, you were pretty negative about it.
I was cautious.
Why?
I love the hire.
Why? Okay, wait a minute. Why do you love the hire, first off?
I think it's a home run. You want to draw eyes to
a home run. Okay. I want to know why. I want to know why you think it's a home run hire, because that is like you're hiring a guy who can win MLS Cup for you.
Well, that's not how I view a home run hire. I think it's I view a home run hire as a great idea. See, we're getting into the great discussion all over again. These days, for me, the word great is almost a pejorative. That's why when we got into the discussion about Seattle, I was like, very good, because great, they're great. That's why I don't like using that word.
Okay,
so this is along those.
That's
yes,
bold.
I'm agreeing. I love this idea because
you want. Why.
because you want to bring eyes to what's going on in Montreal. You want to turn a corner. What do? You go to a legend. I love this idea. You want to try to draw eyes to what you're doing. Hey, we're going to do stuff here in Montreal. If I'm playing Joey Saputo here in acting 101 class. If I'm Joey Saputo and I want to have eyes drawn to my team when it comes to Champions League, if I want to have eyes drawn to my team and try to sit there and put yourself in the discussion for what's going on in the Eastern Conference, what do? You bring in a name like Thierry Henry. You instantly draw eyes to what's going on. So I love this idea. How successful it's going to be, this was the discussion that we got into before the show. I'm always concerned, and I guess it's almost like the George Steinbrenner effect, and I just dated myself with that reference, where you have an owner who is going to say what he thinks. All I have to do is reference the piece in The Athletic about how he wants to be in players' faces and in locker rooms and have discussions. I'm worried, concerned, eyebrow raised about how much of a level of patience someone with money is going to be when you bring in someone of Thierry Henry's stature and things aren't successful to whatever level of immediacy Joey Saputo has in his mind, how he wants things to be in Montreal. Because you always have folks with money sit there and say, well, I've paid you a lot of money. I've given you resources. I've given you this. I've given you that. And I'm not seeing the results I want to see. Does this turn into a Monaco situation where he's out the door faster than he should have been? That's my concern. I love the idea. I'm concerned about the length that he's given and how much rope he's given and how much patience is allowed for him to do what he wants to do.
He's got a 2-year deal. The reason I'm pushing back on the home run higher has to do with the fact that he hasn't done anything as a manager.
No.
And that's the biggest problem for the Montreal Impact. It's not about needing to get eyeballs. I mean, yeah, they do, but if you put a quality team on the field in Montreal and you win things, people will be there and they will support you. That's the number one issue here. Now, there are bigger things at play, and the Athletic piece from the end of the season really dug into the need of an identity, need of some consistency, but I'll go back to Samuel Piette. It's a city where when you have success, you'll have everybody behind you. But if you don't, nobody is behind you. It's like that in any sport, I think here more than most places. Okay, so you got to bring in somebody to win. Thierry Henry has not shown the ability as a manager to win. Now, Monaco is not your average club. It's not your average situation. Although he did have 20 matches there, and he was 4-11-5. 5 draws, 11 losses, 4 wins. Monaco also had moved a whole bunch of players at that time. I'll share the tweet from Brian Wild, who follows the Global Game. He said, they trade talent for money at Monaco, like Mbappe, for example. Then they retool. His record was poor, but they sold 530 million euros of players during 2017 and 18. He never had a chance. So he's got a young group, and he's got an inexperienced group. And the whole thing about Monaco, let's go back so we kind of know what we're getting into here with Thierry Henry. October of 2018, Monaco fired their manager. He struggled in the domestic league. They were 18th at the time of his departure, and there were disputes over transfers. All right. So they hired Henry very quickly. He's given a 3-year deal. He's hired a week after they fired Leonardo Jardim. Okay. So you bring him in. He had been before that. His experience was coaching youth at Arsenal and an assistant coach for the Belgian national team. Okay, so he goes into Monaco. He is taking over a team that's in 18th. He said at the time he wanted to replicate the type of soccer that he played under Pep Guardiola at Barcelona, as well as instilling the professionalism taught to him by Arsene Wenger. He was very hands-on in training. and you saw some weird things, just weird comments. Like there's a clip that I've shared of Henry like making a player push his seat in at a press conference, and that kind of goes back to that professionalism thing from Arsene Wenger. Look, Thierry Henry's one of the greatest players of the modern times in the game, but can he translate that to working with younger players who don't have the same ability that he did, and can he avoid coming off as arrogant when he is trying to instill that professionalism? It's a tough balance.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be something that got out of whack at Monaco. So the home run hire part for me, I don't think it is, because I think what they needed was a manager that could come in and win. I don't think there's anything to show that Henry can come in and win with the group he's going to have in Montreal, which there's going to be a lot of questions. I mean, Thierry Henry's first competitive game in Montreal is going to be in the Champions League on the road somewhere in Central America or Mexico or the Caribbean. That's a little bit of a culture shock. Now, he's been through that as a player with the New York Red Bulls, so he knows the league, so that helps. But he doesn't know the current iteration of the league because it's very different than when he was here playing for the Red Bulls. Very different league now. He's going to have to hit the ground running to a degree. The Joey Saputo stuff, I'm going to honestly push to the side, because it's one thing for Joey Saputo to burst into the locker room with Wilmer Cabrera, who's essentially a caretaker manager on an extended audition, in charge when Joey Saputo's not happy about a performance. I don't see him doing that with Thierry Henry, at least for a long time, until things just become untenable. Then that's a different conversation. But I think you're talking about a different stature there. That's not the issue. I just don't think Henry's done anything to show that he can walk into Montreal and win. And that's their biggest need. It's not about buzz. It's about win. It's about winning. I mean, they got great buzz with Didier Drogba. That was great. They were also a pretty good team at that time. Nacho Piatti's a star in Montreal, but he's also at the very end of his career. It might just be 6 months to get through the CONCACAF run, and then he might go. They need somebody to build something. And if they feel like, from conversations they've had with Thierry Henry, that, look, he's inexperienced, he didn't do well at Monaco, but he has good ideas, and we think he can have the right staff that'll help him transmit them. He's learned from his time at Monaco, and we're going to give him time to build that. Okay, that's great. But they've got to win soon, or nobody's going to pay attention. That's their number one issue. It's just flat out winning. It's just putting a good product on the field, and he has not shown an ability to do that as a manager yet. He only has 20 games under his belt. Sometimes that first failure can spur you on, and you don't repeat the mistakes you made the first time around. Hopefully that's the case for Montreal fans, but I think there's a lot of questions about this hire, because I've always been of the opinion that the manager does not sell tickets. The manager, the winning, well, a player will sell tickets too. A manager doesn't. But winning ultimately sells tickets. Some markets you do have to have the player to go along with it. Some markets you don't. Some markets just winning is enough. I think Montreal winning is enough. But you've got to get there. And I think, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think that in markets like Vancouver and Montreal and Toronto, that when it comes to the MLS product in those towns, if you're not winning and you're not at the forefront of the sports conversation because of what you're doing on the field, you are behind the Canucks, you're behind the Canadiens, you're behind the Maple Leafs, you're behind the Raptors, you're behind who am I missing? What the BC Lions, the Argos, everybody. You are down the line when it comes to the discussion.
Are these three markets really that similar? Because I think Toronto needs star power. I don't know if Montreal has to have star power, and I don't know if Vancouver has to have star power.
I think that it's winning more than anything else. And if you're not, I mean, honestly, in the discussions that I've had repeatedly with our folks up at Barn Burner, it's like, oh, Toronto FC did this. Oh, how are the Maple Leafs doing? Literally, that is the discussion consistently. I mean, if Toronto FC is not doing, if they're not winning,
and they've been winning, like
still.
But that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying, John. Like, they've been winning, and they're still in that situation. So, okay, you've either got to accept that, well, that's just who we are, and that's what we are in this market, and we just have to keep slogging along and keep building, or do you need a superstar to get you over that hump? I don't know. I'm not in Toronto, but Toronto also has the Blue Jays in the mix, and Montreal and Vancouver don't have that. I think that makes Toronto even more crowded. I would assume that the Maple Leafs probably draw more attention than the Canucks in their local market. The Canadiens are probably somewhat comparable to the Maple Leafs, but I don't know how big of a difference there is between the two. It doesn't really matter. The CFL teams are both, I guess historic CFL teams, but how much do they move the needle? The Blue Jays and the Raptors in Toronto make it a completely different conversation than in Montreal. I think in Montreal, if the Impact are winning, they're a huge deal in that town.
Yeah, you're number 2. You're right behind the Canadiens.
Yeah, so it's a different conversation. It's get somebody who's going to win for you. You don't need the gimmick. You need a winning team because it's a great sports town. But they don't want to support a loser, as Piet said. Like in Montreal, it feels like it's even more important to have that winning team. And when you've had a lot of losing teams, and especially as of late, the gimmick of the name as a manager, there has to be something behind it. It can't just be a gimmick. Because nobody's buying a ticket to watch Thierry Henry stand on the touchline in a suit.
Nope.
I don't think they are anyway.
I mean, it might be initially to sit there just for the you walk in the door for those first couple of things. How's he going to do? And then once you see the evidence, then one way or the other, it's just like, okay, well, then it's either the same old Impact, I'm not going back, or it's the winning is going to continue to draw me there. Now, I think that there's that initial curiosity, but then wins and losses will ultimately dictate what's going on, and that's why I raised the idea of just how much patience is the front office / Joey Saputo going to have if things aren't going to go well off the jump.
But if you're already thinking that it can't be a home run hire because the ultimate goal is to win, and if the winning is already a question, then I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they're going to have to spin it, and maybe they can spin this into a big deal because he is a celebrity. Obviously, being a French celebrity in Montreal is going to have some extra weight for him, and it's going to be big for him there. If he is willing to really put in the work to go out and be the face of this team and to go out and talk to everyone in the Montreal community and really build something, it can have a huge impact, but it doesn't if the winning is not there. And that's the number one thing. And just in his career, he has not shown that ability yet. It's 20 games old. Is this job different for him? You'd like to think so. You would really like to think so, but it's a risk. I don't think it's a home run hire. I think it's a very risky hire. Because if this doesn't work, this is not just going and getting a manager who fails. This is going out and getting a big name who fails. That can have a little bit more of a stain. And they can't afford these things. They've got to create that identity. And that's the other thing that I think you're going to need out of Thierry Henry in this role is you have to establish the identity of who the Montreal Impact are as an organization on the field. What kind of soccer do they want to play? What kind of soccer do they believe in? What kind of soccer do their academies play? What does a Montreal Impact player look like? These are the important things, because if you're in the situation that Montreal is and you're losing money and your owner has said he's losing money and he's not happy about losing money, and you're struggling to get a foothold in the Montreal sports community because you haven't been successful in a long time, that's a lot for a manager with 20 games under his belt to take on. Can he do it? He's got the personality too. He's got the background as a player too. He knows the game as well as anybody you could find. But can he make that translate on the field, in the training room, on the training ground, with the academy? That's the big question, and we're just going to have to wait and see. So Montreal has pulled a rabbit out of the hat and shocked everybody in announcing Thierry Henry as their new manager. There's other moves from the trade window, other rumors around MLS. We'll get to those after a quick break. Hang out with us. We'll be right back.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. SDH, November 14th. Make sure you got your calendar marked next Tuesday at Wild Heaven in the West End. Myself, Mike Conti, Kevin Egan will be there. We'll be taking your questions. We'll be talking about life on the road, calling games for Atlanta United. We'll talk about the 2019 season. We'll talk about the expansion draft because it'll happen just a few hours before we have mics in front of us. So we'll get into all of that. We'll start looking ahead to 2020. It'll be a fun night over at the Wild Heaven West End location. Come join us, hang out, and ask some questions, grab a beer. They have, if you're a Wild Heaven fan, I hadn't been to the West End location until a few weeks ago. They have a bunch of exclusive stuff on draft there that you're not going to get anywhere else. So that's what's kind of cool about going to a place like that. I think they have more taps and more ability to crank out like limited edition type of things there than they do at their Avondale Estates location. So pretty cool things going on down at the West End. So come join us next Tuesday night. We'll also be up in Canton on December 4th at Reformation Brewing. Our friends with the Cherokee Soccer Association will be hanging out with us. Looking forward to getting out on the road some in the off season and seeing you guys. I'm going to go to the brew house and make myself suffer through the U.S.-Canada match tomorrow night. So if anybody wants to come and have a beer and probably cry into the beers.
412 televisions at the brew house.
Yes, and you might need all of them to see what the tactical plan is from Greg Berhalter. So we will be there at the brew house tomorrow talking U.S.-Canada. Not on mics, just come ask questions. We'll talk. We'll hang out. We'll be back at the brew house on Monday for Soccer Over There, where we will go deep diving into the international break in U.S.-Canada and start to look ahead to next weekend's return to the club game around the world. But then on Tuesday next week, we'll be at Wild Heaven in the West End. Okay. Catch it
Well, I
up.
was going to ask, can you just go to Wild Heaven and ask questions and not partake? Do they have other things that you can partake?
You might need to be more specific because that was the vaguest question of all time.
For those, and because I'm coming, I will be there.
Yes.
But I don't drink alcohol.
I mean, I know they have water and I know they have coffee because they actually open at like 8 o'clock every morning, which is kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of like a neighborhood meetup spot, which is very cool. A lot of people go in and work remotely from there and grab their coffee and such. I don't know like soft drink situation, but the one cool thing about that property, I believe, I hope I got this right, Lee and White is the name of the development. It's an area where you've got different breweries, you've got different places that you can walk from spot to spot, and you can carry, like if you are drinking alcohol, you can carry your drink from spot to spot. It is open container on the property, which is very cool.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
So I'm assuming, and I will try to get clarification, that there are places there that have different types of drinks that do not have alcohol in them. So I think I know they'll have water for you. I know that.
Okay.
Like everybody does that.
Okay.
And they
So
have
it was
tacos.
just- Oh, see?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, I just wanted to check because I was going to be there and I was going to lob questions from the back and just wanted to see for those that didn't drink alcohol for one reason or another but still wanted to come and hang out what the situation may be.
Yes. Yes. You're not going to be kicked out. No. There's not a 2-drink minimum. No.
I'll come with a megaphone and be from outside the premises asking
Yeah.
questions.
Pretty much. Okay. Let's jump into the rest of the action around MLS yesterday. Darwin Quintero went from Minnesota to Houston in a trade. Marlon Hairston and $600,000 in allocation money went to the Loons. That allocation money is split over 2 years. It's evenly split between GAM and TAM. The Loons also got a third-round pick in the upcoming Super Draft, which, okay. Inter Miami acquired Jay Chapman, a player that I like a lot from Toronto FC, just never really had the space to play in Toronto. They got him for $100,000 in GAM. I think Chapman could end up playing some minutes for Miami. That's a really nice pickup. I like it. There's a guy from Sweden who was playing for the LA Galaxy. He is not coming back to the LA Galaxy. The club announced yesterday, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He told his fans who bought his jersey and supported him and were huge fans of his to go back and watch baseball.
You're welcome.
That's the kind of guy he is. I want to make something clear because people were pushing back for weird reasons on Twitter. I have the utmost respect for Zlatan Ibrahimovic's ability on the field. I think it was incredibly disrespectful the way he treated the league at times, and I think this was the most disrespectful thing he's done in his goodbye statement on social media to basically mock his own fans in LA and mock the club that paid him very handsomely and took him on when there weren't really a lot of places that wanted to. So that's sad, honestly, because I think LA was very good to Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and I hate that he kicks dirt on their face on the way out the door. Somebody's going to pay him a lot of money to play, and I think he can still score goals anywhere. Can he score goals in a major European league for an extended period of time? I don't know if he could score goals anywhere for an extended period of time at the age he is at and with his knee, and is it going to be something that he can do week in, week out? We'll have to find out. Somebody's going to pay him a lot of money to find out because he's performed incredibly well in MLS over the last couple of years. I just wish he could have shown a little more class on the way out to the fans that treated him really, really well in Los Angeles. That's my biggest issue with it. Say what you want about the league, be a heel, all that's fine, but why are you insulting your own fans who, I guess they're not your fans anymore, so you don't care, but that's really disappointing to see on the way out. So, as I've said many times, I think the LA Galaxy will be better without him because they'll be a more complete team. They won't be one-dimensional.
That's how I'm looking at the LA Galaxy and all of this. I mean, we saw when he was not playing for whatever reason, turf, back-to-back, what have you, injury, keeping an eye on his health in general, that they seemed to be a better team, a better unit.
They had the makings of that. They didn't
Yes.
get a chance to do it on a regular basis, so they weren't, but you could see glimpses of what it could be if they didn't have him for an extended period of time.
Right. So now I want to see how the Galaxy do things going forward. I mean, we saw with Pavone and Jonah Dos Santos, and there were pieces. Their backline was still horrific, but you could still see them pushing forward, doing things offensively. But I want to see how Guillermo Barros Escalotto addresses those issues now in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have Pavone, and Guillermo has said that Pavone will be back for 2020, and now if he slots into a designated player slot, then okay. I don't think you're going to be able to pull off what you did before, where he was a designated player but not in a slot because of creative loans and such. I think he's going to have to be a DP, so you're not going to have that open spot. You do have a decision to make on Roman Alessandrini. Do you bring him back after missing most of the year injured because he's in a designated player slot? You continue the dance that you've had with him about potentially moving him to a TAM role, signing him, adding another year onto his contract, whatever, and figuring that out, maybe. But more than anything, the Galaxy have to get better defensively. No matter what they do, if they don't get better defensively, they're going to be the same as they have been. And I mean, Zlatan's impact ultimately on the LA Galaxy was to take them from a team that missed the playoffs to a team that did win a playoff game and got up to 5th in the table from a team that was on the outside looking in. It was an impact. It wasn't a dramatic one. I think the ceiling wasn't a whole lot higher than they actually got to. If it was, that might have been their ceiling. They've got to get better defensively, or you could bring Zlatan, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi. It doesn't matter. They've got to figure out a way to keep goals out of the back of the net, and they haven't addressed that for 3 years now.
Ricky Ricardo says it's not only a disrespect to the fans of the Galaxy, but to his teammates also. Why wouldn't you want Galaxy fans to watch Jonah Dos Santos and Pavone and all the young talent they have? Zlatan's talent is undeniable, but good riddance that he's gone. #Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last night on 92.9 The Game. I sat in for an hour with John Chuckery, and you need players in any league that are heels, that are not liked by people outside of their own fan base. That's good. That gets emotion into it. You don't want everybody to be cookie cutter, vanilla, boring. Yes, I completely and utterly agree with that. But I don't like disrespecting. I didn't like disrespecting the league, but okay, if that's who Zlatan wants to be, fine. I really don't like the disrespect of fans that treated him well and didn't go nuts last year when he wouldn't play on turf and skipped out on games that they needed to win to get into the postseason. Players who put up with Zlatan really having awful body language at times when he didn't get the ball he wanted or didn't make an effort on passes that weren't perfect, and players that did what was best for the team and didn't make a stink about it. You heard a couple comments here and there about things, but nothing dramatic. And then, I mean, Ricky's right. Like, on the way out the door, you kick dirt in your fans' face, you kick dirt in your former teammates' face. Why? There's no need. Like, you're not gaining anything by doing that. I don't know. Maybe you're gaining a few clicks, and maybe that's what matters. I don't know. Just wish you could handle it a little bit differently. So I think ultimately it's best for everybody. It's best for him because obviously he had issues with being here. It's best for the league because you don't have one of your top talents putting it down on a regular basis. And it's best for the Galaxy because they'll be a better team without him, because they'll be more of a team. It's not just about pumping passes into Zlatan and seeing if he can figure it out. It's about coherent strategy.
Jorge B., who used the hashtag Jorge is buying the Mucha Plata shirt today.
Oh, very cool, Jorge.
Which we like that hashtag.
Gracias, Jorge.
His question, in your opinion, who has made the biggest impact in MLS? Zlatan, Rooney, or Beckham?
Beckham, easy. Not even close. Longevity, for one. You go back and look at the teams that Beckham played on. Like, it was rocky at first. So he came in 2007 and came in injured which was just awful luck. I mean, he came in, he hurt his ankle late in the La Liga season with Real Madrid. Never got better. He was, I think, taking injections to play through the end of that season because he had fought his way back into the team. They won the title. Came in injured. Of course, after all the hoopla and everything, he wanted to play. He tried to make a go of it. Probably shouldn't have. Wasn't 100%. Also on a bad team. 2008, it got worse. And 2008 was a year where, according to the Grant Wall book, The Beckham Experiment, which I highly recommend if you've not read it, that was the year that Beckham's people really wanted to take control of the Galaxy, and they pushed to bring in Ruud Gullit as the manager, and it was a colossal failure. Just so many different things did not work with Ruud Gullit in charge of the LA Galaxy, and it wasn't until they brought in Bruce Arena, who is one of the best managers in MLS history. I think he is the best. He also is a manager who, you talk about having that presence. Bruce Arena came in after that book came out, and Landon Donovan and David Beckham were not on the same page. Donovan was sniping publicly in a major way about David Beckham. Bruce Arena pulled them into a room and said, all right, we're settling this, and I need both of you on the same page or this team's never going to be anything. And 2009, they got to the MLS Cup final. 2010, they had a good year, but they was maybe one of their better teams in this era. They didn't get to the MLS Cup final. 2011, they won MLS Cup. 2012, they won MLS Cup. That was Beckham's run in MLS. 3 MLS Cups, 2 championships. No question he has the most impact on the field. No question he has the most impact off the field. Because, I mean, the designated player rule was initially known as the Beckham rule. Because he opened that door for the owners to see, all right, it's worth investing in these types of players because look what they can be. And not everybody's a David Beckham. But Cuauhtemoc Blanco came to Chicago and had a massive impact. Thierry Henry came to the New York Red Bulls, had a huge impact. It could be done. And it opened the mind of the league. And Beckham coming when he did and embracing it. And that's the number one thing here, is that he embraced being part of Major League Soccer. Zlatan never did. Wayne Rooney did, and Wayne Rooney is going to be the one out of those 3 that you look back at and you wish you had more time. Because Rooney, on the field, he was himself. He's always going to argue about referees. He always has since he was a teenager. Fine. Don't care about that. Don't get bent out of shape about it. He delivered on the field. He worked incredibly hard. He'd play any position that was needed. I mean, go back to the Toronto game in the playoffs. His last game in MLS, he played as a holding midfielder. He was deep in the midfield trying to get DC through to another round. He hung out with his teammates, and that's something that Beckham was known for as well, was, not just, they liked being one of the guys. And then you look at some of the comments in the Pablo Maurer piece of The Athletic about Rooney, comparing it to Zlatan. I mean, Rooney took Felipe out for dinner on his birthday after he had been traded to DC, and Felipe's like, yeah, Zlatan would probably have invited me over to his house and showed me all his trophies and talked about how great he was. So, Rooney embraced it like Beckham did, but Rooney was only here for a year and a half, and it ended earlier than anyone thought it would. It's just going to be one of the great unknowns. Beckham changed MLS for the better on the field because he won championships, and off the field because he changed the way owners think about the league and what the league can be.
For me, Zlatan is always going to be that guy who, if he saw something to do where he thought it would benefit himself and would give off the impression that he was there to be there as a representative for the team, like doing a Kimmel appearance where you're on, you say things that are cute and funny, you drop the one-liner, and you're from the LA Galaxy, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and you come on and you're saying all the cute things, but in reality, it's there to help you and your brand. It's not there to help the Galaxy with what they're doing. It always seemed that for me, he was doing something to benefit himself. And yeah, if it benefited the Galaxy, then yeah, okay, fine. But that wasn't his number one thing.
Yeah, it did come off that way. And whereas Beckham, when he was doing those sorts of things, it was about elevating the league. I mean, Beckham was on Good Morning America. You know, like it was, I think, different. And it's a different time, too, because he was really the first to come in and do that to that degree. So for me, he'll always be the one that has the most impact of that type of player. I mean, until you get to a Lionel Messi or a Cristiano Ronaldo, who are the two greatest players of the current generation. If they come to MLS, then maybe we're having a different discussion about it. But I don't know if they would come and be here for the length of time that David Beckham was. And it wasn't all perfect with Beckham. There were plenty of things that, you know, he made mistakes on early, the loans to Milan and trying to get back into the England team for the 2010 World Cup. Totally understand the motivation, but it did make it appear that the Galaxy were second rate to him. But that changed. And he embraced it so much that he signed another deal to come back for 2012 because his deal was up. I think he gave a lot back to the league, and that's why he's still involved in it. And that's why he has battled and fought and tried to go to war with every politician in Miami to get a stadium built, because I think he really does believe in this league and what it can eventually become. And he was a huge part of doing that. So for all of those reasons, it'll always be Beckham with the most impact. I think on the field, Zlatan had 2 seasons that are going to be very hard to match. But you look at 2 players that played at the same time in Carlos Vela and Joseph Martinez, and Vela won an MVP, Joseph won an MVP. Vela won a Supporters' Shield, Joseph won an MLS Cup. Joseph, when you compare the number of goals scored in the same amount in games, Zlatan, I believe the stat was 52 goals in 56 games or somewhere around that. Yeah. Joseph, 88 goals in 100 matches in all competitions over 3 years, which is pretty similar to the strike rate. And, oh yeah, by the way, 3 trophies for the team, all the individual trophies he won last year. Yes, we have seen that type of success before because we're seeing it right now. And Carlos Vela is right there as well. So Zlatan was great on the field, but he didn't win anything individually in the league. He didn't win anything for his team. There's no way you can look at it and say he's had the same impact as others. Socially and from a marketing perspective, yes, really the only other comparison for Zlatan's time is Beckham. And I think Beckham was better at it than Zlatan was and had more of an impact because the league was coming from a different place. So there's your comparison on historical designated players. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We'll get into more of your Thursday thoughts, and we'll get into U.S. national team, and we'll get into some other news and rumors from around the country right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, November 14th. Thursday Thoughts edition. Lots and lots of thoughts on this Thursday. We have Thierry Henry back in MLS on the touchline in Montreal. We have Darlington Nagbe patrolling the midfield for the Columbus Crew. We have Darwin Quintero trying to score lots of goals for the Houston Dynamo. We have Jay Chapman trying to break into the Inter Miami lineup. We also have rumors around the league as well. And we'll be getting into the US-Canada match here in just a bit because we have to. Okay. Other rumors around the league. Toronto, they had their end-of-the-year media availability yesterday, and Michael Bradley was said to be the top priority. Re-signing him is their number one issue. President of the club, Bill Manning, said he's the most important pressing matter. Like I told Ollie Curtis, I'd like to see in the next 7 to 10 days we can wrap it up, and that will dictate where we go. It does sound like we're going to be able to get him on a deal that could be tammed down. How far down they go, we'll have to figure that out, but it sounds like that's the type of route that they're going to go here. And according to the comments that Michael Bradley gave yesterday as well, he wants to be in Toronto. He's very happy in the city. I'd be pretty shocked if he's not in the red kit next year.
Yeah, and now I want to see what the pieces that are going to be around him. You're going to have, bits and pieces there. It'll be another season with Pozuelo, and I want to see, Bradley. We saw the fulcrum of what he's able to do at Toronto FC, but now I want to see how they're going to bring pieces around and look at the contracts of all the other players, like a Josie Altidore and things like that.
Josie, they re-signed.
Okay. For how many years?
I'll have to go back and look, but they had a deal in front of him before the year was out, so I'll double check here in a second. But Toronto did get to MLS Cup.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about scrubs here.
No, not scrubs. But how do you maintain, I guess, is the question for me going forward with Toronto FC, with everybody getting a year older and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's not the same group that started this in 2016. This is honestly 2015, really, when they first started to break through. So, they've been able to refresh the squad. Let's look at Toronto because I think they are one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference next year, along with Atlanta, along with NYC. I think those are the three you go in with. Philadelphia would be, I think, right there as well. So let's say those four. The top four that finished are going to be your top four in terms of favorites for 2020. Okay, so you look at minutes played for Toronto FC last year. Marky Delgado, 24 years old. You're good. Pozuelo, 28. He's actually going to get a break this offseason. You're good. Quentin Westberg, they say they want to bring him back. He's 33. That's not the same as a 33-year-old field player. As a goalkeeper,
I was going to say, a 33-year-old keeper. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he was really good for them. So, cool. Bradley's 32, and that's why I think you're going to be talking about a different kind of contract for him. Justin Morrow, 32, played 2,700 minutes. Haven't really seen that drop-off from him yet. Think he's okay, but yes, he's over 30. You got to watch. Mavinga, 28, you're good. Alvaro, 23, you're great. Osorio, 27, you're good. De Leon, as a depth piece, about 2,000 minutes played, 29, you're good. Josie, 30. Injury history is the concern there, not as much the age. Richie Larea coming into his own at 24. You're probably going to have to either diminish the minutes or move on from Laurent Simon at 34. You brought in Omar Gonzalez to help do that. He's 31. Subasic Endo, 26. Drew Moore, you would think, is probably at the end of his career at 35. Eric Zavaleta didn't factor in as much at 27. Liam Frazier is a player that I think will help take some of the load off of Michael Bradley. He's 21. He was really good for Canada when Mark Anthony Kaye went out injured against the U.S. Frazier will play more than 810 minutes next year. But then you look at the guys they added late in the year. Benazet, 28.
Yeah.
Erickson Gallardo, 23. You've refreshed this team along the way. I think they're fine with that. You're probably looking at some extra depth at center back to replace Simon, or at least to take some of the minutes. You're probably looking at extra depth on the left side of the back line to ease the load on Justin Morrow. Outside of that, if you bring Bradley back, you're fine. Because Frazier can ease the load on him and play more, and to where Bradley doesn't have to play every match. So I think you're in a really good spot if you're Toronto because of the Benazet and Gallardo additions. Now, they've got to deliver, and that's a different conversation. Yes. But the roster is constructed pretty well. It's just getting Bradley back is the number one thing for them. And I think that's why Manning's made that top priority.
Can we look at the Quintero deal to Houston for a couple of minutes?
Yep.
All right. So if memory serves, the Quintero deal to Houston gives them, I think, $2 million in cap space now?
Let me look and see what he was on last year. Let's double check that. The option was a different number possibly than what he was on last year, because what he was on last year is going to affect the cap space you have now. You know, what he would have been on, well, you didn't put him on that. So that doesn't necessarily affect your cap space.
Because what I wanted to ask was about Minnesota and then asking about Houston putting in pieces around Quintero. So I guess this is a two-franchise question.
Okay, we'll start with Minnesota. So he was on 1.75. I believe the option was somewhere between 1.75 and 2. Minnesota is reportedly signing him to a new deal, and they'll use TAM on him. They'll get him down to a TAM threshold. So Houston has created some flexibility by signing him to a new deal, not just activating the option. All right, we'll come back to Houston. So Minnesota, cap space isn't the issue. You have a designated player spot now. That's your issue here, is you've opened up a DP slot. Now, yeah, I mean, technically, if you want to talk cap, like you have a max spot on your cap of $530,000 that's available if you don't sign a DP, but you kind of have to sign a designated player if you're Minnesota to replace him. Yeah. So that's where you're at.
And then for Houston, with Quintero heading to Houston, I know that we've been talking about the future outside of Houston for folks like Albert Ellis. Is Quintero the guy now, capital T, capital G, when it comes to Houston's offense, or is it going to be help with the pieces that they're looking to have around him with Tab Ramos in charge?
It's the pieces. I mean, it's everything, because Mauro Manotas in 2018 scored 25 goals in all competitions. So, you're not talking about like this team hasn't had talent. Albert Ellis was a double-digit goal and assist guy in 2018. Now 2019, well, there's some issues here, and this was something that it seemed like you had Ellis and Kyoto who were ready to go, just ready to leave. They didn't want to be there anymore. It was time to go. You got to address this. Right now, you're looking at a group with Quintero, with Manotas, with Christian Ramirez, with Ellis, with Kyoto. You have had offers, fairly substantial ones, it sounds like, on Manotas, on Ellis, and maybe there's interest in Kyoto, either trade or moving him on. Adding Darwin Quintero means you've got more flexibility to do what you need to do. Ellis wants to play his contract out and then walk on a free. We already said it. I would not allow that to happen. I would find out where he wants to go, get the agent involved, say go negotiate, get the deal done where you want to go. We'll get something out of it on the transfer fee, but we're not going to stand in your way. We just have to get some allocation money back for you so we can do what we got to do. That's number one. If Kyoto's an issue and he's never been a consistent starter and it's always been rumblings of things, if he's an issue, trade him, move on. Tab Ramos needs to come in and start fresh. If you can get 8 figures from Manotas, which at one point sounded like a rumor out of Mexico, do it. Do it. You've got Christian Ramirez and now you've got Darwin Quintero. What you have to be able to do, and this is where I would hope that Tab Ramos is thinking, is, okay, it's time to reset. It's time to start fresh. All right, you're going to go make those moves. If you bring in a couple million for Ellis because you don't have a lot of bargaining power here. He wants to go. You got to get the deal done. Okay, cool. You get something. You get some cash. You can get some allocation money out of that. You get good money from Manotas. You're going to have room on the designated player side, and you're going to have room on the cap side to dramatically remake your roster. And you have Quintero to build around. You're in a good spot. You're in a really good spot if you're Tab Ramos and you're Houston. I want to see what they do, and that's going to be the question, but the Dynamo could be a team to look at in the West. And a lot of it is going to come down to Tab Ramos and his adjustment from being a U20 national team manager to a day-to-day club manager and how that goes. Because if he hits the ground running, the Dynamo could be a team to keep an eye on in the West if they spend their money effectively too.
And I know there's some silly season stuff that's still on the page, and I know that we need to get into the national team discussion because when we do, Daniel Price says he doesn't think his heart can take tomorrow's match at this point.
Oh, come on now. I mean, it can't be like that about it. A couple other silly season things real quick. So there is a report in Mexico, Informador, which is a Mexican outlet covering Liga MX. Chivas de Guadalajara striker Alan Pulido, he could be the first Mexican Liga MX Golden Boot winner in 8 years. He also could be moving to MLS, drawing interest from an unnamed MLS side, and one link that he has to an MLS side is that he played for Matias Almeida when Almeida was at Chivas. So, could San Jose be looking to bring in Alan Pulido? Yeah, it's possible. I think San Jose is showing that they're going to spend more money than they have in the past. Could another team be looking to bring him in? Absolutely. Anybody who needs a striker. So Chicago, Minnesota, potentially Houston if they sell Manotas. Maybe the LA Galaxy if they move on from Alessandrini or figure things out with designated player slots. Tons of different options. So Pulido would be a great signing if you're able to get him. Another one that was interesting, and it was kind of a throwaway in a piece out of England, Jack Wilshere, not playing a ton with West Ham, could be looking at going to MLS. He wants to play wherever he's going to go. He's 27. He's under contract through the middle of 21, but if you could get a player like that, there's a lot of teams that could benefit from a Jack Wilshere.
I was going to say, when it came to something like that, you look at a name like that, and with what Wilshere isn't doing and what he has done in the past in the Premier League with time when he's gotten regular reps, I think that he would be an asset for somebody over here.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. He's valued at €10 million according to Transfermarkt. I wanted to pull his $11.4 million. He's only played 6 matches in the Premier League this year. He's played twice in the Carabao Cup. 8 games, 323 minutes this season. If he can come over here and play, yeah, grab it. Pounce on that. Mm-hmm. If you've got the money to pay for him and he's willing to come, yes, you go do that right now. Anybody. Anybody could benefit from that player.
I was going to ask the specific question: who off the top of your head could benefit from somebody like Jack Wilshere?
Anybody.
Yeah.
There's nobody that's going to be like, oh no, we're good.
Nah, we don't want Jack Wilshere. It's all right. And then Daniel has followed up by saying that he's not normally so pessimistic. It's just that the national team leaves so much to be desired right now.
It does. It definitely does. But we got to talk about it. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get ready for U.S. and Canada tomorrow, and we'll get you set right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, November 14th. MLS trade window is closed. Now the next step is the expansion draft protected lists. Those will become public on Saturday at 10 a.m. The expansion draft is next Tuesday at 5 o'clock Eastern time. And it's like a conference call kind of draft, so it's not going to be hours of a draft. It'll be back and forth really quick. You're starting to get teams that are announcing some different moves at the moment. So FC Cincinnati announced their remaining 4 roster decisions. They're executing contract options for Logan Gadula and Hassan Ndam. They declined the contract option for Forrest Lasso and declined the loan purchase option for Derek Etienne. So he goes back to the New York Red Bulls. So Lasso is now going to be available, and he would go through the waiver process. There was a lot of chatter that maybe Nashville would want to get Lasso on a permanent deal because Cincinnati loaned him there. He really, I think, did a lot to become part of the group in Nashville, and Gary Smith seemed to really like him because he was playing a lot of key minutes late. So could Nashville try to get Lasso in the waiver process? Absolutely. I think they will. I think it would be kind of a no-brainer. I'm a little surprised they didn't think about throwing, a third or a fourth round draft pick at Cincinnati or something to go ahead and get him and pick up his contract option. So keep an eye on that. You'll get more announcements like this. Teams don't have to announce their option decisions now, and a lot of them won't. Those options don't have to be executed until next Thursday. But you'll get some teams that'll go ahead and announce it. Cincinnati has. We'll see what else comes out the rest of the day and going into tomorrow. Tomorrow night, is the United States and Canada in the CONCACAF Nations League. And I care about the game because I want to see this team get to the semifinals of the CONCACAF Nations League. But I've been told that the result doesn't matter for the manager because Greg Berhalter will be there no matter what, and it doesn't really matter what happens tomorrow. And there's been progress and blah, 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 blah. I would like to actually care about the game, and I would actually like to think that it's important. But when you're told that it really isn't for the manager's long-term future, and you're told that, well, Christian Pulisic has an injury that he picked up. Michael Bradley picked up an injury in MLS Cup. Zach Steffen, it's a collaborative process with us in the club, and we're not going to call him in for a game that is a must-win. You have to win both of these games. You have to overturn a goal differential. If Canada gets a result against you, you are out, and you don't advance from a group with Canada and Cuba. That would be an embarrassment. But if you're not calling in your best players because of injuries, and it doesn't really affect the manager's status, well then, I guess I shouldn't care about the game. I'm conflicted.
I feel like I want to bang my head against the desk. I really do. So, yeah, we're cool. The game doesn't matter, but yeah, it really does matter.
No, it really does matter. No, nobody's saying, nobody from U.S. Soccer is saying that it matters. Some of the players are talking about the importance of it, but the organization has told you that it doesn't matter. Don't listen to them. It does matter. It is a competitive match, and if you lose competitive matches at home, that's a big problem.
Yeah. We're cool. Berhalter's safe. Everything's fine when it really isn't. I mean, this whole process and all of these sound bites and all of this stuff has driven me crazy in all of this.
It doesn't look like it's fine. Maybe somehow it's not showing publicly, but publicly it doesn't look like it's fine. And from a PR perspective, to come out and say that it's fine, that's a problem. Because even if you are going to be patient, even if you've already made the decision, look, we're going to take our lumps here, we're going to move on. Even if you've done all that, to come out and basically tell your fans, yeah, we don't care what you're saying at all, we're not even going to acknowledge it, because we're going to tell you that everything's fine. Even if you've already made the decision to ignore what people are saying, to continue forward on this path and put the blinders on, you can't, from a PR perspective, do it the way that you've done. You have to show that you have acknowledged that, yes, people are worried. You don't say, I'm not concerned at all about making the World Cup, we will make the World Cup. You have to acknowledge that there is concern. You can still keep your same decision. You can still keep the direction you want to keep. But from a PR perspective, for an organization that desperately needs better PR, don't tell your fans, don't tell people that are following this team that they don't know what they're seeing. Can't do that.
I just, why not just go ahead and lay it all out there and be honest? Because
they did.
I don't want to say that. I don't want to use the word crossroads, but if things do not go well in Orlando, the national team is headed to places where I can't think of the last time that it was like this.
Yeah, no, it was 2017. It was exactly 2017.
I'm still taking this last couple of years as a group think. I'm going backwards past this current run of form. Then it was 2016 when they barely got through the semifinal round. Then it was 2012. Then it was 2015 where they got beat in the Gold Cup semifinal. Then it was 2012 where they barely got through the semifinal round of CONCACAF. This ain't new. I think that's where I'm going. No.
This ain't new. They've been here before. They haven't gotten out of this. World Cup 2014 did not get them out of this.
why not just go ahead and sit here and say, look, we got work to do. We're going to do A, B, C, D, and E to get out of this. We recognize we have problems. I know that you may lose the PR battle initially, and actually admitting that you have work to do.
No, they have. They're talking about making the progress. That's not the issue. They're not going to come out and say, we're going to fire Greg Berhalter if he doesn't get this. They've already made the decision that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, he's cool.
They shouldn't come out and say that. No, they shouldn't. What is that going to do to help you right now?
No, because then that gives you almost a self-fulfilling prophecy when you're going into one of the biggest matches that you have in recent form. But, I mean, at least acknowledge that stuff has to change, or things are going to change with people, even though we know that this hierarchical structure of Jay, Ernie, and Greg, it's this triumvirate is not going to turn into Brutus, Cassius, and Caesar, but acknowledge what's going on. And even though we know that one individual is not going to either allow the other individual with the same last name to be fired if things go wrong.
Well, first off, Jay Berhalter's not the CEO yet. That needs to be understood. Everything has been said that he was not involved in this hiring. Okay, I'd like to take that at face value, but the fact that you have not hired a new CEO that is not Jay Berhalter yet is a concern, because you kind of need a CEO. And if you're just waiting for the right time to move Jay Berhalter into that role, that's a big problem for U.S. soccer. That's not the issue. I disagree with what you're saying in general, because they have acknowledged that there's a problem. When Ernie Stewart is talking about progress, they're acknowledging that there's a problem. They're making progress from something. The issue is that it feels like the blinders are on, and it doesn't matter if the progress is slow, fast, or non-existent. All that matters is that it is going to continue on this road, and you just have to hope that it is the right road.
No matter how unsuccessful you've been on the pitch, you're going to continue going down this road.
And you're only going to know that you made the wrong turn when the road ends and you drive into a brick wall.
Yeah, or you go over the cliff in your Wile E. Coyote holding the Acme sign saying help.
Yes, that is the only way you know that you made the wrong turn. That's the scary part of this. From a PR perspective, and look, there's a bunch of different levels to this, but I'm going to stay right on the PR side for right now. The PR side is not making the coaching decision. The PR side is spinning it. And the coaching decision we'll get into in a second. The PR side, you can't stick your head in the sand and make it feel like your consumers don't matter. You can't be as brazen as you were in the recent press conference with Ernie Stewart and basically say that, yeah, I don't care what you think. You can keep on the path that you have already committed to, and you can, behind the scenes, not care what people think, but you can't come out and tell people that what they think doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Because that's a very important distinction here. It's not... The PR side is something U.S. Soccer has to improve, for sure.
Agreed.
The coaching side, the progress that has been cited, I disagree. You have to win this tomorrow. You have to win this tomorrow. You obviously should beat Cuba and the Cayman Islands and do what you need to do if you win tomorrow. But you have to win tomorrow. Not winning tomorrow is a colossal failure. You look back at failures. And that was why I mentioned all of those other failures, because there's a lot of them. This is not new. Don't let 2014 and John Brooks's goal and Clint Dempsey's early goal and Jermaine Jones' beautiful goal against Portugal, don't let that cloud you from the fact that that World Cup, the U.S. was battered and under siege throughout the whole competition, so much that Tim Howard's tying records for saves in a game because you're giving up almost 40 shots. You gave up almost 100 shots in 4 games. Okay. You got to the World Cup. That's better than what you did the next cycle. So you went from a team in 2010 that, hey, it wasn't the greatest team either, but it didn't feel like 2014. So you went backwards there. Along the road of 2014, you struggled to get out of the semifinal round. You did. You had a lot of bumps along the way in qualifying. You got through it. Okay, you had failures, but you also rebounded from it. You found a way. Cool. 2015, you lose in the semifinals of the Gold Cup in Atlanta to Jamaica. Failure, 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 failure. You lose in the CONCACAF Cup that would have sent you to the Confederations Cup to Mexico in Los Angeles. Failure. You struggle to get out of the semifinal round of qualifying. You rebounded from it. Okay. You lose your first 2 games in qualifying. Failure. You lose badly in your first 2 games of qualifying. Failure. You addressed that failure. You fired Jurgen Klinsmann. You brought in Bruce Arena. You won the Gold Cup. You had some good qualifying wins. You lost at home to Costa Rica. Failure. You rebounded with a win. You're set where all you need is a result in Trinidad to go to the World Cup. You stink up the joint. Failure. You've had a ton of failures over the last decade of U.S. soccer. You've bounced back from some of them. But you look at where this team is at the end of 2019, and you look at where this team was at the end of 2009. The end of 2009, you'd qualified for the World Cup, you'd went to the Confederations Cup and lost in the final to Brazil, a game that you should have found a way to win because you had a lead. You beat Spain, one of the only teams to beat Spain during that time frame where Spain went on to win the World Cup, and they won back-to-back Euros. In competition, not in a friendly with 7 subs. In an actual competition, you beat Spain. Very important distinction. That was the end of 2009. Now, you missed the last World Cup, and you're on the verge of not getting to the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal, that half the people want to tell you this competition doesn't matter and the U.S. shouldn't be in it, but you can't win a group with Canada and Cuba? Come on. That's 10 years, y'all. So the soccer side is a mess. The PR side is a mess. The youth national teams, you have 1 full-time youth national team coach. 7 have left in the last 2 years. You've got 1 that you hired in March. He got knocked out in group stage of the World Cup, and I don't care about getting knocked out where you got knocked out. You looked really bad in doing it. Okay. Trying to find positives about U.S. soccer on the men's side right now. I'm trying, and I'm trying, and I'm trying. The U20s have been consistently getting to World Cups and getting to knockout stages. That's good. And the manager left because he took a job that he should have taken. And it's not that it's a bad thing he left, but okay, well, that's good. But now that guy's not there anymore. You're getting players who are going to play in major European leagues. That's good. You're developing, I think, more talent than you've ever developed. That's good. You're not winning. There's a big difference. Every time that the U.S. fails on the field in a result, it doesn't mean the developmental structure is broken. It doesn't mean all these 20 different things under the surface that you want to get to and try to explain it and fulfill whatever agenda you have about soccer in the United States. It means that you lost the game. And too many times, that's been the number one issue with this team, is you're losing games, not against teams that you should be losing games to, which is more of the developmental issue. You want to get to where you're playing on an even playing field with your Germanys and Argentinas and Brazils and Spains and all that. Yes, that doesn't happen overnight. You're losing games in Canada for the first time since 1985. You're losing games to Trinidad on the road in qualifying where all you need is a result. You're losing games at home to Costa Rica. You're losing games in a Gold Cup semifinal at home to Jamaica. You're losing a third-place game in a Gold Cup at home to Panama. You're dropping points to teams in CONCACAF qualifying on the road that you have no business dropping points to. That's not a developmental issue. These are teams that you are better than. That's not the issue. You've got to change all of that. And for all the talk about Greg Berhalter wanting to develop the identity and this and that, like, you can't do that if you're not getting past Canada. You can't do that if you're struggling in a Gold Cup. You can't tell me that you're making progress and you're developing an identity when the results are the same they've been over the last decade. They haven't been good enough. And against teams that it's not about developing more talent to beat. It's about actually beating teams that you should be beating. And that's happening far too often, that you're losing games and losing points in qualification processes against teams that have no business taking those points off of you. Don't try to argue with me that the Jamaica team in 2015 was a better team because of, well, MLS is holding American players back or pay to play, or you were at home in a Gold Cup semifinal and you lost to Jamaica. Go down the rosters. Compare it. Come on now. Jamaica beat you in a Gold Cup friendly this year. USL Championship players were featuring for Jamaica in that match. MLS seems to be helping everybody else in CONCACAF, so why is it hurting the U.S.? You're losing games to these teams. It's not about the Germanys and the Spains and the Brazils. It's about the Jamaicas and the Canadas and the Trinidad and Tobagos. It's got to change. It's like everybody's worried about the long term, the big picture. At this point, it's about the short term. It's about
get through the short term first.
It's about winning games you should win, flat out. And if that's a mentality thing, fix it. If it's a mentality thing and the players you're calling in don't understand what it means to be in these games where you're going to have to fight to get through it, okay, call in different players. You've got plenty of players you can call from. You do. Don't let people tell you otherwise. You do. And if it's tactics, well, then hire people who are going to have the right tactics. There's no excuse. Doesn't mean you should go into Canada and win 5-0. Don't get me wrong. But when you know, and your manager should be being told by his bosses, you need to survive here. You need to get through this. So what is it going to take to get through it? You get a result in Canada, you win at home against Canada, you're through. You're good. Don't go in there and play for a draw, but don't go in there and play the way you did and get spanked. Because now all the pressure is on this game. And now you don't have Zach Steffen, you don't have Christian Pulisic, you don't have Michael Bradley. No idea what the lineup is tomorrow. I'm going to assume that they'll play in the same way, and they will try to build out of the back, because that's what we've seen consistently in this year. But no idea who the players are going to be, no idea how the performance is going to look, and this is a very important game, no matter what people say. Because at some point, the United States has to show that they can win games that they should be winning. It's not about beating teams that are better than you. It's about beating teams that you should be beating. That's what the U.S. has to learn how to do first.
In this current situation, it seems to be, okay, you asked the question of what's wrong. It seems to be choice D, all the above. System, coaches, want to, whatever. It seems like this is either systemic or cyclical, and I'm leaning more towards systemic, considering what has gone on over the past decade, which you've laid out this morning. Then, I guess going back to the beginning of all of this, where did it go wrong and why? Is that something that can even be quantified or can be pinpointed to sit there and say, okay, this happened and started this slide of mediocrity and not qualifying and losing games you should not have lost? What went wrong and when, I guess, is my question.
Well, one thing is you should have, in my opinion, moved on from Bob Bradley at the end of the 2010 World Cup. And it's not because Bob Bradley didn't do a good job. It's because I think your best way to keep the intensity of a national team program is to have managers there for one cycle. And they know that their job is to be as successful as you possibly can in the World Cup, and that will complete your cycle. I think it is incredibly rare that it is successful to have a manager stay. And I know people will point at Yogi Love, and that is part of the incredibly rare part. I think for the United States, it's best to have a guy who's there for 4 years. Okay, so you didn't make that move. You kept Bradley on, but then you moved on from him after the Gold Cup loss to Mexico in 2011. You turned to Jurgen Klinsmann, who promised a lot, talked up a lot of stuff, promised proactive soccer. You became more defensive than you had been in 15 years, 20 years. It was a lot of talk that didn't lead to anything. You should have moved on from him at the end of 2014. You didn't. You should have moved on from him after the Gold Cup debacle in 2015. You didn't. You kept going. Could have moved on from him at the end of semifinal qualifying, although it was better than the Gold Cup, but there was still some rocky moments. You didn't. You lost your first 2 games of the Hex, which one team's ever bounced back from that in the history of the Hex. You didn't join them. That doomed you. You did find a way out. You did get your head above water, and then Bruce Arena, awful tactics in Trinidad, awful tactics against Costa Rica at home first, and you miss a World Cup. For me, the problem is, go back through all of those. So you've made the decision to just keep guys on longer than I think you should. That's part of it. But then in the Klinsmann era, because the Bradley era, when it ended, you lost in the Gold Cup final to Mexico, you fired him. Okay? You're saying results matter. You have the World Cup. Well, first you have qualifying that had some bumpiness getting into Brazil, but you get there. You have a World Cup where, I'm sorry, the performances weren't good. They weren't. I'm sorry. You're looking through rose-colored glasses if you're looking back fondly on the 2014 World Cup for the U.S. They weren't good. You kept them after that. And then results didn't matter after the Gold Cup, did they? You lost in a semifinal at home in the 2015 Gold Cup. Shouldn't be happening. You get to host the Gold Cup every time around. You should be in the final. There's a culture now that results at times are far too secondary. And that seemed to change with Jurgen Klinsmann coming in, because then it was all about process and all about development and all about this and a lot of talk that hasn't changed the results. Has it changed the level of talent? I do think it has. I do think Development Academy has improved the level of talent. Are there ways to improve it even further? Yes, 120 million%. But has it improved as a whole? It has. MLS is a much better league than it was 10 years ago. The ability of players in the youth national teams is better than it was 10 years ago. Yeah, all those things are true. But the actual importance of results for the national team, not the youth national teams, for the national team, it's been shown far too often that they don't matter. So what's the initiative to go into this match? And, I mean, do they need to go get that guy from the Seattle supporter section from back in the day, the go fight win guy? Do they need to go get him to come in and scream at them before the game starts to actually show that maybe going and fighting and winning is important for this team? Because I think the Federation has shown you too often that it doesn't really matter. And to act like this competition doesn't matter is a joke. The U.S. cannot, at this point, pick and choose what competitions they say matter. You need to go actually show you can win games that count, because these games count. Say what you want about the FIFA rankings, but these games count more than your friendlies. So they matter. Go perform. And if you don't, at some point it has to be shown that that's a bad thing. That's my biggest frustration. And it honestly, I mean, the 2014 World Cup, I was angry after that because I was very disappointed in the way that the U.S. played. But, all right, Klinsmann got you there. You got to a World Cup. You got out of the group. Okay. You shake hands. You give him the gold watch. You move on. You didn't. And then after the Gold Cup is when I was the angriest because there's no excuse for that being acceptable. There's no excuse for losing in a Gold Cup at home in a semifinal when you had never done that previously. Or no, you had in 2000 when Canada won it. Sorry. I think that's the only time that's happened. And you said, well, it's okay. It's all right. We'll keep moving on with what we're doing. We're making progress. Results matter. And too often in the last decade, results have not mattered enough for the U.S. Or they've mattered sometimes, but then they haven't mattered other times. And that's the ultimate thing here. That's what it comes down to. This team is measured by results. It's not measured by development. It's not measured by developing players. The national team, the senior national team, it is Al Davis just win, baby. That's what it's about. So you're not doing that? Well, then there's a problem.
This, much like every other thing on the planet, should be regarded as a results-driven business. And
not everything. Now I want to make that clear. Like, youth national teams, different conversation. Technical director roles, different conversation.
Yes, granted, yes.
Senior national team, you've got to get results in competition, and the U.S. has not done that enough.
No, that's what I was focused on, was senior national team. And for me, it is, this is a country and a program and a history that should be beating teams that they're not beating. And that was why I asked the question about where do you think this flatlining / mediocrity / not qualifying / bleh that we're seeing out there right now, where it started, and the systemic lack of want to or whatever. It's like, it's something that you can see. And it's, for me, it's hard to quantify sometimes. You sit there and say, okay, you should be beating these teams, yet you are not. And is it something that is just past the surface of coaching and trying to do things when you only have players for a certain amount of time in a senior national team situation?
Then you shouldn't be trying to do things.
Right.
Because you know how much time you're going to have with these guys. You shouldn't be trying to do those things if you can't do them in the amount of time that you have, because you're not getting more time.
And it should be the simplest things that you can think of with this group of individuals. And you should be, with the talent that you have, trying to come up with an idea of, okay, how do we beat Jamaica? All right, we have guys in. Let's come up with a plan. Let's do something with the guys that we have, instead of overthinking the process and trying to do something that completely and totally blows your back axle and screws up your transmission, and then the car doesn't run and you end up losing. So that's why I asked the systemic question about where do you think this wins, because I know the easiest thing is to sit there and go, okay, we can look at the coaching and go backwards and sit there and point at certain things with coaching. And that's why I wanted to know if it was something in your mind that was deeper in addition to coaching, considering what we're seeing right now with the front office and how they're handling things. We can sit here and look at Klinsmann and go, you stayed too long at the dance. Same with Bradley. You were allowed to stay. He shouldn't have had
that decision. It's not about staying too long at the dance. Jurgen Klinsmann shouldn't be calling that shot. U.S. Soccer should have moved on from him at the end of 2014 and brought in somebody who had more urgency to get results, because that's the issue. The whole thing about the capital T, capital S system trademark, I almost wish that hadn't become a thing, because that's not even the issue at this stage. It's not. It was early on because Berhalter was a little bullheaded about it, but he's moved on from that. Yes, they want to play out of the back. They want to be a possession-based team. Those are all good things to want to be. That's fine. If you can't be, the most important thing that is not the issue with this team, or that is not the thing that is trying to be changed with this group, is the mentality. It's the fact that these games should be not literally, but life or death for these players. They should have meaning.
Yes.
You get the chance to put that shirt on, and yes, it should mean something. And for the coaches, too. Like, both. Because if the players aren't feeling that, one, you have a whole lot of players who have the same mentality, which makes no sense. Or you have a coaching staff that is not transmitting that mentality and that intensity to the players that they have. And it's not acceptable. Just like the U17 World Cup, not the results, but the way the team looked was my big issue, is the same way that the team looked in Canada. Not intense, too lethargic, and when things started to go badly, no response. It's been way too much of that for far too long, because if you go back before, when maybe you didn't have as much talent in the 90s, you had that mentality, you had that fight, and it wasn't about a bunch of guys who were playing in Europe who had created that mentality because they were playing in Europe. It wasn't about, well, they're having to deal with pro-rel, so they understand that mentality. No, they had that mentality, and the coaching staffs had that mentality. Steve Sampson had that mentality. Steve Sampson just had an awful World Cup, and obviously there were a lot of other issues going on at the time too. But Bora Milutinovic, man, that's a tough one to say.
I always thought it was Miljutinovic. I just call him Bora.
You can say it however you want. He answered to all of it.
But yeah, where's the want to?
I don't want to make this. I don't know. I don't want to make this a thing like that, because that's what everybody will grab onto, and it's the want to. Want to is such an overrated thing. It's mentality. It's intensity, to get even more specific. That's the issue right now, is that it's not just the players. Players have a lot of things going on in their careers. These players right now, you've got guys coming in. Christian Roldan just won a championship, had the highest of highs. All right, now he's back in a U.S. national team jersey to go play a game that is like a championship game. You've got to have people in that locker room who, from a coaching staff, who are setting the tone. They have to set it. And I feel like far too often over the last decade, that has not been set appropriately. And that lack of intensity, it's showing. It's showing in games where things get hard, and things are harder because Jamaica's better than they've ever been. Trinidad and Tobago, better talent than they've ever had. Canada, far better talent than they've had in a long time. I think this could be their best ever team. Everybody's gotten better. The U.S. has gotten better too. But these games are more competitive. You've got to have that intensity to get through them. And it's not just from a player standpoint, because, yes, that's part of it. You've got to have that intensity from the top. And when you're not getting that from your technical staff, and they're not getting that from the people above them, because you're going into this game being told that, no, everything's fine. We're not worried about anything. Everything's good. Progress is being made. 25 minutes against Mexico. All is good. Well, then why should the coaching staff have that intensity to pass along? Because they're not feeling it. It's important all the way across the board. It is intensity. And you don't have enough of it in this program.
Do you think, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question, do you think that along the same lines of intensity, the urgency and the importance of wearing the kit with the stars and bars or stars and stripes on it, with that U.S. crest on it, do you think that that is being impressed upon the players about what it means and what it should mean, and all of these elements to represent your country? That seems like in the intensity element, that is missing as well.
It's a nice story, but I mean, you think these guys don't want to play for their country? No, I think that's bogus. I think that's a crock. That's a way out. That's a cop out. It's about intensity in matches. It's about intensity about results. I think these guys want to be there. I mean, I don't think you're getting players who don't want to be there and don't care about
they wouldn't
representing
be there
their
in
country.
theory, yeah.
Like, no, I think that's a cop out. Take it further. It's intensity in matches. Go back to the Canada match. Okay, you're trying to play the way that you have been instructed to play. All right, you're not having success doing it because Canada is outplaying you. They are taking things away from you. Okay, coaching side, where's the adjustment? Playing side, you give up a goal. Where's the response?
Yep.
These are all multiple. It's not about not wanting to be there. That gets into some stuff that started to bubble up during the Klinsmann era that I thought was, and the arena era as well, that I thought was ridiculous. About like, well, you know, it's these guys who don't want to be there. They don't take it as serious. Stop. That's a fairy tale. It is about intensity in matches. It is about feeling pressure for results. If the Federation tells you 2 days before a game, 3 days before the game, that there is no pressure on the coaching staff about a result here, that trickles down. And it goes back to the interviews at the first camp ahead of the Nations League games last month, where players were interviewed and they talked about how, no, this is no different than the friendlies we've had. These camps are no different. This is the same. We're being told to do the same things. Everything's the same. Well, no, it shouldn't be. It's not the same. It's not a friendly. These are games that matter, and expectations should be placed on them, and the expectation should have been to win all four. Okay? If you don't win all four, then you better get a result in Canada so you're not in the situation you're in right now. Because now all Canada needs is a result in Orlando to advance and knock you out. Where is the pressure about that being an awful, awful thing? It's non-existent because the Federation said on Tuesday, and Ernie Stewart representing the Federation said, everything's fine. We're happy. We're content. We are pleased. Things are moving in the right direction.
So a player hears that, and they're going to take those words and just sit there and go, yeah, okay, the amount of effort that I'm doing is fine. It's
no,
what
the
they're
player
looking
never
for.
thinks that. The player never thinks that direct. No player sits there and says, okay, I'm giving the right amount of effort. It's the extra bit that's needed when things get hard. Nobody's pushing you to do it. And it's not just on the players here. It's on the coaching staff, too. Coaches affect intensity.
Yes.
Coaches affect mentality. You went in, go back to the 2002 World Cup with Bruce Arena. And this is why the second time around was so frustrating for me, and the way the Trinidad game looked. And his lineup first, his tactics, huge issue. But go back to the pregame speeches in 2002, and U.S. Soccer captured it. They put it out on a video, and it was a great insight into the way that team was built. Every time in the locker room before they went out on the field, it was, I don't remember all the specifics, but he would basically say to them as they were coming together in their final huddle, first shot, first foul, first goal, be first to everything. And that was the mentality that team had, and it showed in a game against Portugal, where Portugal came in as a favorite in that World Cup, and the U.S. ran them over in the first 30 minutes. That's the mentality that this team has not had in a long, long time. So if, going back to the top of this about this game tomorrow, if the Federation is telling the manager, No, you're good. Everything's good. We're happy. We're pleased. We like where things are going. That means that this game that should be a must-win game doesn't really feel like it. So then can the manager dial up his own intensity to get these players geared up to go and fight in this game? It's going to be on Berhalter to do that because he's not feeling any pressure. So he's going to have to do that. You've seen his mannerisms in his time in Columbus and on the sideline for the U.S. That's not really his M.O. He's been more of like a professor, very studious. He's not a guy to get in somebody's face. He's not screaming and gesticulating. Is all of that combining to create the atmosphere that the U.S. is going to need tomorrow against the team in Canada that John Herdman is screaming and gesticulating? John Herdman is talking about how big it is for Canada to be in this situation. It just feels completely different. And it feels like the mentality and the intensity level that the U.S. used to have, because they had to, because they weren't good enough to compete with teams that were just far better. So they balanced that with the intensity. Well, now they don't have that. So now you have better talent, and you're facing better talent from teams that you used to be better than before, and now it's more of a 50-50, but you still have the better talent. But they've got the intensity that you used to have, and now they flip the tables on you. And that's got to change. It's got to change. Or you can have whatever tactics you want. You can have whatever system you want. You can have whoever you want there. But if that intensity from the top does not change, well, then this is what it is. So one day, and this is why it's important to have these conversations, because one of the things that should be affecting that intensity and should be affecting that mentality is talk about it. That's one thing that I completely and utterly agreed with Klinsmann on, and to a lesser extent agreed with Brad Friedel. Brad Friedel took it way too far with wanting players to be threatened in grocery stores and such. But yeah, like being held accountable, that's going to create some of that intensity. Well, you're basically being told that U.S. Soccer is not holding Greg Berhalter accountable for a result tomorrow. So are the players going to be held accountable for a result? Is that going to happen? Or is it just about progress to 2022, I guess? Well, if it is, then okay, you just have to hope that things go your way tomorrow and you get the win, and then hope that they go your way against Cuba, and then you hope that it's a good day for the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals and final, and then you're going to be tested again in World Cup qualifying with 10 games that if you don't finish in the top half, you're not guaranteed a spot. And if you finish 5th or 6th in the group, then you don't even get a chance to try to fight through a playoff and such. So I hope it changes, but it doesn't seem like it is, because it doesn't seem like that accountability is there, and that lack of accountability is affecting the intensity, and you're getting to the point that you're in. So we'll see. Tomorrow we'll talk about the tactics, and we'll talk about the things that the U.S. has to do to win this game, because they have to win this game. If the Federation isn't putting that pressure on, I think fans are, and fans are being heard, and you are seeing people talk about this in a different way than I think it was talked about going into Toronto, and it was definitely talked about at the beginning of this tournament. So you got to look at it from multiple levels, and for me, it's just it's more about accountability and intensity than anything else. So we'll get into the tactics tomorrow, because you're going to have to get those right, too, against a very good Canada team. We'll get into anything else that pops up around MLS, any other moves around the league as well, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Any final thoughts, John?
Not well. Cody Byers on Twitter, Tafka linked to a Cody Byers Facebook post, MLS discussion group, about a website that was linking a Chelsea player to a move to Atlanta United.
If you go to say that who it is, it's okay. Like, point out how silly the website is.
Well, and that's what I was doing. I was
I actually clicked on the website. So Chelsea's Pedro is set to a move to Atlanta United, according to something called sportsrecents.com. You go to sportsrecents.com, it's basically a website where they try to get you to click on links and watch games from around the world. There are no news articles on this particular website at all. It's like a Russian bot site, basically, to watch any game around the planet.
Nice. So clean your computer after going to that site and realize that it is not coming from anybody with any kind of pedigree about anything. So there you go. Welcome to the silly season, because this is only going to happen more and more. Make sure you are checking your sources, people. Don't let somebody post things about Ben Olsen being fired and retweeting it, and you got to check. A lot of people got caught on that one. A lot of people who should know better made the mistake. This is far too easy here. This is way too easy to realize that, yes, you should probably not pay any attention to this kind of
They
nonsense.
have no Twitter account either.
Usually a pretty good sign that it's nonsense in 2019. One quick one on Thierry Henry. Montreal Impact president Kevin Gilmore, just now on TSN 690, says that Thierry Henry reached out to them about the open coaching job, and Henry was the only coach they interviewed. Okay. On that note, we're done. We'll be back tomorrow, because I don't even know what to say about that. 9 o'clock, we will get into U.S. and Canada and all of the particulars about the massive, big, important, at least to some people, U.S.-Canada CONCACAF Nations League game that is a must-win for the United States. We'll get into all of it tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for all the tweets. Mucho platiel.
Mucho platiel.